Please pay attention, listener. It is wonderful to have you here. It is not just another mysterious story that you are going to hear. Rather, it is something more profound, something that touches the very borders of what we believe about life, death, and what may lie beyond. It was a package that started it all. Old and forgotten, worn by the passing years, and lightly dusted with time, it was discovered by mistake in the attic of a peaceful house in Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach is the same coastal town where Edgar Cayce, the man known as the Sleeping Prophet, lived for the majority of his life. There have been rumors going about for a long time that he left behind more than anyone could have ever dreamed, despite the fact that many people remember him for his extraordinary prophecies and profound spiritual insights. The box was devoid of all identifying characteristics, including a name, a label, and any indication of who had concealed it. The contents of the package, however, were extraordinary. A folder that had been wrapped in fabric and a single envelope that had yellowed with age and been sealed with a mysterious inscription that read, "To be opened only after 70 years. However, someone was unable to wait. An individual gave in to their curiosity, and ever since that time, the contents of that folder, which appears to be a transcript of a secret chat with Cayce, have emerged and disappeared suddenly and mysteriously throughout the internet like a ghost. It is said that some people have seen it once, but they have never seen it again. Some people consider it to be a clever hoax. Those individuals, however, who have studied Cayce's words and who realize the quiet force in his voice and the calm manner in which he spoke even of the most painful facts, are of the opinion that it is true. They claim that this was never intended to be discussed in public. In spite of this, it managed to escape for some reason. The conversation took place in 1944, just a few short months before Cayce died away, as stated in the transcript. This was not an interview with a journalist or a scientist for that matter. The other voice in the audio is not identified, but whomever it was, they were well aware of the questions they were going to ask, and they were not terrified of the responses they would receive. Nothing less than the journey that the soul takes after death is going to be the primary topic of the discussion. Cayce offered a description of 7 levels, which are 7 stages that every soul goes through after departing from the bodily physique. Neither metaphors nor symbolic steps are being used here. As if he had witnessed them firsthand, he describes them in a way that is crystal clear. What really sends shivers down the spine, however, is the fact that Cayce does not simply discuss the immortal afterlife. It is the future that he discusses. It is our future. What is going to happen? What we are not prepared to confront now. At the beginning of the transcript is a sentence that completely contradicts everything that we believe we know. Whatever you believe to be true about death is nothing more than a veneer, an illusion. When it comes to the real thing, nobody is prepared for it. This is not only a story that will be told. A map of the invisible is what it is. From beyond the curtain, a message has arrived, and maybe, just maybe, a wake-up call to act before it's too late to do anything about it. According to Cayce, the first level is more of a transitional level. According to him, the soul is in the process of manifesting itself in this location. It's like a dream you're trying to escape from, but every movement is like wading through thick water. Souls that have reached this level are unaware that they have passed away. They are looking for the light, but all they find are reflections of their worries from this world. There are some people who remain at this level for decades. Reflection is the second level as well. At this location, every individual relives their life, but not from their own point of view. Rather, they do so from the point of view of other people. The stage that Cayce describes as being the most difficult and the most significant is the one in which you feel the pain of those you hurt, the joy of those you helped. It is here that repentance is born, or the final oblivion. Awareness, which is the third level. From this point on, the soul starts to comprehend the structure of being. It is here that it encounters guides, which Cayce referred to as beings of light. These guides do not communicate verbally. Rather, they convey information through visions, memories, and energy. There are a lot of people who come back from this level, including dreamers and Cayce himself. A medium, a seer, or a prophet is created by them. But beyond this, it's not for everyone, he explained to reporters. The prohibited levels, which are the ones that very few people ever reach, begin from this point. How come? Cayce does not make any sound. Maybe he is merely aware of the fact that words are powerless in this situation. However, it is precisely at the fourth level that the most terrible aspect occurs. This is not because there is hell associated with it. Rather, it is because there is reality. There is a scary reality about us. Not only does what he goes on to discuss alter our image of death, but it also alters our perception of life themselves. Cayce referred to the fourth level as the mirror corridor. He stated that in this level, the soul is able to perceive not only its own life, but also the identities of people it could have been. It is not a metaphor to say this. A first-hand experience of all the other routes that were available in earthly life, but were not selected for one reason or another, is what it is like to have this experience. Every one of them is like a different reality in its own right. In one, you forgive. In another, you seek revenge. In a third, you enter a monastery. In a fourth, you commit a crime you never committed in life but came close to. And the most terrifying thing is the realization that all these selves are alive. They are real at the level of spirit. And every choice we make branches out, not into a hypothesis, but into an energy structure that exists in the shared field. In this corridor, Cayce said, the soul feels for the first time that God is not a judge, but a witness, and you are the only one who judges yourself. He also stated that many people who reach this level give up, seek to return, and are unable to bear the weight of consciousness. Some people also move forward. He referred to the fifth level as the infinite time. At this point, linearity is no longer present. When this happens, the soul starts to see everything as a single layer, including the past, the future, and the present. This is the location where Cayce was able to receive his forecasts. It was his assertion that he did not see the future as a movie, but rather as an ocean of possibilities. There were knots in that water that were particularly clear and dense, and they were events that were almost certain to occur. One of these knots? A great rupture in the middle of the 21st century. Cayce did not detail exactly what would happen, but the visuals he depicted were startlingly specific. Cities without light, people in white masks, children born with the memory of previous lives, countries disappearing from the map, not through war, but through the thinning of meaning. In addition, he stated that all of this is tied to the manner in which mankind would pass the collective third level, which is awareness. Due to the fact that, as he explained, the entire universe is likewise a soul, a global soul. In addition, it, just like every other person, goes through its own degrees after death. Assuming that mankind is currently at the third level, the next step is either the attainment of enlightenment or the rejection of the self. The sixth level marks the beginning of what he refers to as the separation of the shadow. At this level, the soul releases everything that is not its essence, including emotion such as anguish, fear, pride, and envy. The process does not destroy them, rather, it frees them. To Cayce, it is comparable to removing one's clothes all the way down to the bone, or to light. And it is in this place that the soul is able to make its initial touch with what we refer to as the Creator, or with something that is of a higher order, or even itself, but on a more distant timescale. What about the seventh level? Cayce became silent at this point. A sentence is cut off in the middle of the transcript. There was a lengthy silence, and then, 2 pages later, there was only one sentence. I cannot speak about it, I'm not allowed. Why did he not get permission? How come? What is the reason for the fact that this particular level cannot be discussed? There are researchers who are of the opinion that the seventh level represents the conclusion of the cycle, a departure, a passageway to a different phase of existence that is beyond our comprehension. Cayce is believed by some to have witnessed something that may drive someone who was not adequately prepared to insanity. From this point forward in the conversation, Cayce will be discussing what he refers to as the potential traps of the future. This is the point at which the most interesting part of the interview begins. The traps of the future, according to Professor Cayce, are not in technology, not in catastrophes. The trap is in the forgetting of the spirit. He asserts that humanity is currently facing a test that occurs once every few thousand years, and that each time, civilization either comes to life or collapses into oblivion. All of these civilizations, including Atlantis, the Sumerians, and Egypt, prior to the establishment of the dynasties, were aware of the 7 stages, according to him. At some time, however, they made the decision to forget. Rather than by mistake, it was done on purpose, due to the fact that the truth was too taxing. Because if a person knows they are immortal, they either become light or madness. Cayce reiterates, the future is not programmed, as she believes. It is constructed in every moment, and we, as humanity, are now choosing to go into a soulless technocracy or return to the source. A new kind of human being is expected to emerge by the middle of the 21st century, according to his prediction. They will not be different from one another in terms of their biology, yet their understanding of time, energy, life, and death will be drastically altered. For the same reason that Cayce himself did, these individuals will have a direct connection to the level of awareness. They will recall their previous incarnations, experience the suffering of others as if it were their own, and have the ability to perceive events before they take place. Moreover, he asserts that as a consequence of this, there would be an effort made on a global scale to pacify this wave. Knowledge will make people dangerous, according to his statement. Not to the world, to the system. It is his contention that this generation will be confronted with 3 distinct stages of resistance. People who have a new consciousness will be ridiculed to the point of being branded crazy, fanatics, and charlatans. Isolation, under the pretext of care and under the cover of science, structures will be developed to detect and treat those classified as having this condition. A temptation will be presented to them in the form of power, money, and recognition. Nevertheless, the price will be the rejection of their spirit. According to Cayce, the only people who will be able to make it through these stages are those who have come to the realization that they are not a body, not a name, and not a profession. Rather, they are a flow, a light, and a mind that exists beyond time. This is where he makes his return to the 7th level, albeit not in a direct manner, in a roundabout way, by use of an image. The door that he is referring to is one that cannot be opened from the outside, because the sheer desire to enter it is still fear. It can only be gone through when the soul quits wanting to enter it before it can get through. This door leads to that which has no form, no word, no meaning, only silence, and in that silence, everything. This door is located beyond the next door. At this point, the interlocutor inquires, "Have you been there?" There is no response. There is only a brief delay. And then this, "I was on the verge of not coming back." After this session, there are others who believe that Cayce's health began to worsen dramatically and that he lost a portion of himself in the process of attempting to explain something that cannot be described. It was at that time that he started penning his final prophecies, the ones that were never published, and the ones that some think were the ones that were contained within that little box. Time has caused the ink on the final pages to become hazy and yellowed. Certain individuals assert that Cayce did not write them by hand, but rather that he dictated them while he was in a trance or disturbed state. Furthermore, it is believed that he himself did not remember what he had spoken after the fact itself. Everything starts with a single phrase, which is, "When you hear the voice from within, do not argue, it is older than you." Then there are fragments, which are packed with imagery, symbols, and sentences that are nearly poetry. Despite the fact that some experts consider it to be nonsense, Some who have explored practices of consciousness and transcendental states are adamant that the truth that is encoded here is something that cannot be communicated through logic. According to one passage, in the year when water touches the sky and the earth begins to sing, a crack will open between worlds. Through it will come not the dead, but the forgotten. They are not evil, but they are hungry, not for flesh, for knowledge. How does the phrase, water touches the sky, come to be? What exactly are the forgotten? There are those who see this as a forecast of climate calamities, while others see it as a metaphor for information oversaturation, which is the state in which the soul becomes overwhelmed by facts and loses its identity. Nevertheless, the concept of the crack, the interworld, is the most terrifying aspect of the story. A place where the line between those who are living and those who are stranded on the 4th or 5th level and are unable to find a way out begins to collapse. In addition, Cayce noted that souls that are stranded in these regions are not yearning for bodies, but rather for consciousness through which they can communicate, to act, and to exert influence. During the 21st century, he forecasted that there would be a significant increase in the number of persons who claimed to be able to hear voices, see visions that would later come true, and experience sensations that should be impossible. They will be diagnosed, given pills, isolated, but not because they are sick, because they are the threshold between worlds. Afterwards, there was still another abrupt change, as well as a prophecy that nearly no one discusses. According to the majority of documented literature, it was removed. When the third continent disappears, the first word or phrase of a phrase. On what continent, however? Possible destinations. Australia? Is that Greenland? Alternatively, something that is less literal, such as the region of the spirit? A number of people are of the opinion that it is a reference to the European soul, which is the progressive loss of meaning, faith, and the connection to the origin. In his writing, Cayce makes a connection between this happening and the silence of the churches and the helplessness of science. When scientists begin to speak like priests, and priests like bureaucrats, listen only to the children, they still remember. After that, it is made quite obvious that this is about some kind of comeback, a recollection of the information that was known prior to birth. Every child under the age of 5, according to Cayce, still recalls the path that led them from one level to the next. However, after that age, the memory is wiped by school, worries, and restrictions. On the other hand, if in the future there is a generation that is able to keep this memory, then the world will change in the span of just one generation. It was placed in a distinct location on the final page. Paper that is quite thick and resembles parchment. Even though it was shaking, the penmanship was legible. A signature that reads EC. Moreover, here are a couple sentences. If you are reading this, it means you have already heard the call, and now you have a choice. But remember, knowledge changes you forever. Simply said, it was not a note, it was a strong warning. According to the folklore, the individual who discovered the box vanished without a trace immediately after these words were said. It is said that he traveled to Tibet. Others, that he was discovered dead, and that his body had a peculiarly twisted appearance. However, the majority of researchers choose to remain silent. They claim they are unable to comment or that they do not wish to. Where did all of this come from? Neither an allegory nor a theological system can be said to consist of the 7 levels. In reality, they are a navigational aid that will guide you through the afterlife experience that is taking place right at this very moment. Cayce asserted that after death, one does not travel to a new location. Rather, one merely reveals what is already on the inside of them. Moreover, each level is there in existence in life. Getting stuck on the first level, which is living your life like a dream and not knowing who you are, is a possibility. Through the second, you are able to feel the pain of another person as if it were your own. You are able to enter the third, and you will start to notice the linkages where everything is connected. Is there anything else? If you are prepared, only then. In addition, this is precisely what the last prophecy was about. It was about a moment when the gates will open from within. This is not for the general public or for everyone. Rather, it is for those who remember. Do not believe. Keep in mind. On the other hand, there will be regular folks who do not adhere to any particular faiths, mantras, or groups. The first is a bus driver. A cashier is still another. A single mother makes up the third. On the other hand, they will start to hear each other without using words. When one is dreaming, through a series of peculiar coincidences, by means of experiences that cannot be adequately described, and they will be aware of, even though death is the end, it is actually the beginning. A line is not what the future is, rather, it is a mirror. The truth is not something that exists outside of us, rather, it is something that we are, fearlessly. The most essential thing is that they will understand that we are not the only ones. It was never the case. The spirits of those who have made it through all of the levels continue to be around, however, they do not appear as shadows, but rather as light. The clues. There is warmth, a conscience. Furthermore, when a person suddenly realizes that they are not alone while they are in stillness, this is not an illusion. This is a sign. Cayce left a key, according to those who have studied these materials, and they are certain. It is a map, and a word of caution. On the other hand, not for me. The only people who are able to remember the real world are those who are willing to let go of the world that they are accustomed to. This particular type of text will not be displayed on television. It is no longer available on YouTube. Academics do not make reference to it, but it is still alive, in copies, in your memory, and in you. Furthermore, as a result of having this information, you are no longer the same person you were before you read it. This brings us to the sole question that remains. Are you going to go back to the same dream, or are you going to go even further? If you have the impression that this content hit something more profound within you, you shouldn't keep that feeling to yourself. Please give it a like, not for the sake of the algorithms, but as an indication that you have woken up. If you are prepared to proceed forward, then you should subscribe, because there is more to come. This is the kind of stuff that is never actually uttered out loud. And ensure that those who are prepared to hear it are aware of this. To put it simply, the time has come. And those who see are obligated to locate one another. Here we are, right now.